People say I talk about some weird stuff, some far out stuff. But how about that chair that you're sitting in isn't solid? How weird is that? This reality is nothing like we think it is.
When I saw what Icke is doing, I was a bit jealous of him. Wow, look at what this guy's doing.
I don't know if anybody else could do it but him, actually.
We are in a period now where speaking your truth is not just important, it's utterly crucial to where humanity goes from here. The world needs renegades.
Group of biologists try to bury the idea that plants are conscious. This is kind of indicative of the mentality that runs science. See, a biologist that's basically downloaded only the programming will be, you would not be surprised to hear, focused on biology. And so they judge everything and all possibility through their perception of biology and consciousness, which they judge through the lens of biology. But to see the true magnitude and nature of reality and consciousness, you have to get your head from up your own subject speciality, because that will, if you don't, that will colour and skew every perception of possibility. Well, it can't happen because biology says it can't happen. Yeah, but biology is just a human invention in so many ways that limits our perception of what consciousness is. So we just go through this story first, and then I'll come back. It says here, the gardening gloves are off. Frustrated by more than a decade of research which claims to reveal intentions, feelings, and even consciousness in plants, more traditionally minded botanists have finally snapped. Someone's saying something that they don't agree with. So we must snap. Plants, they protest, are emphatically not conscious. Well, given everything that's conscious, I think there's a chance that plants might be. The latest salvo in the plant consciousness wars, isn't it amazing? Some say, well, plants have consciousness. Plants don't have consciousness. So, okay, you believe that. Okay, fair enough. Let's have a beer. No. One has to impose its will on the other. It's not right. No, your perception says it's not right, which is not necessarily the same thing. So, in this war on about plant consciousness, the latest salvo has been fired by US, British, and German biologists who argue that practitioners of plant neurobiology have become carried away with the admittedly impressive abilities of plants to sense and react to their environments. While plants may curl their leaves in response to touch, grow faster when competitors are near, and spring traps when prey wanders into them, the vexed biologists argue that there is no reason to believe that plants choose their actions, learn along the way, or occasionally get hurt in the process, as some plant neurobiologists assert. So, artificial intelligence can learn, but a plant can't learn, because biology, as perceived by left brain science, says that can't be. And it's kind of within this story are so many kind of roads to go down. That one. Our perception of biology, thus life, says that this can't happen, so it cannot be happening. So who decided the biology perception? Well, scientists did. Oh, so a group of scientists decide that something can't be, and so it can't be. Yeah. This is the mentality that you're dealing with. And, of course, what they're looking at is the purely biological perception of plants don't have a brain, as if the brain is absolutely necessary to be conscious. It's not. The brain is a process, the human brain is a processor of information, which can be programmed to process information in one way and shut out information and perceptions of another kind. This is what programming is all about. But you don't need a brain to be conscious, because consciousness is a state of being. It is a state of awareness. It's on its basic level within our reality, it's an electromagnetic phenomenon. And the brain is processing information, the human brain, from that electromagnetic field. Some people call it the auric field. And the auric field can overwhelmingly be far, far, far more aware, of course, because it's not locked in the body, and far more, quote, intelligent and wise than the human brain, which is merely processing information from that field and from other external sources that are transmitting in its frequency band. Hence, through technology at the right frequency, you can invoke thoughts and perceptions into the human brain, which people take to be their own. 5G is going to up that ante massively. So if you program the human brain to, like a computer, you firewall it off from certain, if you like, frequencies or perceptions, which is absolutely possible, then the auric field, I don't know, call it soul, whatever you want, is communicating through the body. But not everything that it's communicating gets processed into a perception. So the brain, if it's programmed, if it has its programs externally, its perception programs externally imposed, will basically be like a computer, where the person at the keyboard and the mouse is banging the keyboard, tapping the mouse, nothing's happening. The computer's gone its own way, because the computer's become isolated from the person at the computer, running the computer, who should be running the computer. So this idea that you need a brain to be conscious just shows the scale of, I wouldn't say insanity, although I think it's closing in on that line, given, you know, when you take a breath and take a step back and look at it, it's kind of painfully obvious. But certainly this myopia, which runs so much of science, while science and scientists are perceived as the arbiters of knowledge, when they're not. Some independent, open-minded, truly conscious scientists who are pushing the cutting edge at least at the science level, of understanding and exploring reality, different. I'm talking about the mainstream. So a plant is consciousness, awareness, and that is interacting with the structures of the plant. And so when, let's just go back here. While plants may curl their leaves in response to touch, grow faster when competitors are near, and spring traps when prey wanders into them, the Vex biologists argue that there is no reason to believe they choose their actions, learn along the way, or occasionally get hurt in the process, as some plant neurobiologists assert. But those responses are coming from the field. From, yes, the consciousness of the plant, which then impacts upon the reactions of the plant. You know, I've read of research which involved having a plant in a room, and then they get someone to come in and basically shout and hurl abuse at the plant. And they've got electrodes on the plant, and they're measuring the electromagnetic responses to that. And they're very obvious. The plant doesn't like it. It's reacting to it. And people say, well, plants, people say, talk to plants. Well, you can't talk to plants, because how do plants understand what you're saying? They've not been to school. Anyway, when you speak, you are actually creating electromagnetic frequency fields or sound wave frequency fields through the vocal cords. And the plant's consciousness can decode them. It doesn't decode them into I hate you, plant, in this case. It decodes them into a field of perception that it feels. And it's because of the nature of the abuse, the nature of the electromagnetic frequency fields from the vocal cords expressing that abuse are very distorted. They're very negative. And the plant picks that up. So what they did with this experiment I was reading about is they then had a guy come in, or a woman, I don't know, a person, and who spoke very kindly to the plant, who was very loving. And the plant responded to that in a very, very different way. And this is because words of love, to be words of love, are a harmonious field. I hate you is a frequency. I love you is a very different frequency. And the plant picks that up. And of course the plant wants to be loved. It likes love around it. Who doesn't? It's the essence that holds everything together. It's the balance point of everything, love. So what they did in this experiment as well is they then, after the, shall we say, the loving stage, they got the guy who'd owed abuse and stuff at the plant, they got him just to walk into the room again. And as soon as the guy walked in the room, the plant reacted through these electrical connections, electrodes, to the technology. It recognized that the abuser was back in the room. And I've written about this whole thing in many books. I think the last one, Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, I go into this. Plants communicate. Trees communicate. They have family groups, you might describe them as. And when a tree is cut down, the rest of the group feels the sadness of it. Everything is conscious. The plants are conscious. Trees are conscious. Everything is conscious. It might not be conscious in exactly the same way, although ultimately we're all expressions of the same consciousness, but it might not express itself in the same way. Humans walking around with brains in their heads, and plants that are expressing their consciousness in a different way, but we're all conscious. And therefore, we can give love to the natural world. The natural world can give love to us. Everyone can give love to everyone else, or the other thing. And it's so typical. Writing in the journal Trends in Plant Science, where plant neurobiology made its debut in 2006, Lincoln Tays, a botanist at the University of California, Santa Cruz, and 7 like-minded researchers state, quote, "There is no evidence that plants require and thus have evolved energy-expensive mental facilities such as consciousness, feelings, and intentionality to survive or to reproduce." Energy-expensive mental faculties. I think he means a brain, or they mean a brain. See this. There is no evidence that plants require and thus have evolved energy-expensive mental facilities, wait for it, such as consciousness. So consciousness can only manifest, you see, through a physical mechanism. That's the idea, because they are so enslaved in the 5 senses that they cannot see beyond it. And therefore, if they haven't got a brain, they can't be conscious. I know so many people, I watch them on the news every day, who have a brain and are barely conscious. And most of them are running the world. Oh dear. Anyway, I found that a very indicative story of the mentality of science.